Hmm? 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 Hmm. Hmm? Where are the SEC filings? I do not see any. No Schedule 10. No 8K. No 1012B. Where are the filings? If this spin out is to be completed in March, we should see some filings by now.
Hey, it's me again. So today, I just scared my dog with yelling, "Hey, it's me again." He got scared and ran away. Woke him up. Today, let's talk about some clues, or lack of thereof clues, which are indeed clues themselves. So, as we all saw in the December 3rd press release, there was a possibility of MMTLP, or at least the Torchlight assets, spinning out into oilco, a private holdings, right? And if it were to spin out, at least by now we would see some SEC filings. This was reiterated in January 14th press release on how this would be completed by March, given March 31st. If it is, we should be seeing some type of SEC filings by now, at least an 8K. But the fact is, we haven't seen any SEC filings. No 8K. No Form 10. No 1012B, which sometimes doesn't have to file until like right before it trades. But no 8K or Form 10. None of that. We've seen nothing. And we still don't know who the preferred share representative is. People have tried to contact Mark and ask for who the preferred share representative is, to which they got pretty frustrating results from that. They were not given who the preferred share representative is, although we should have one. It was in the prospectus. They were given the runaround. So the fact that there's a lack of SEC filings or any other filings that would support a spinout or a sponsored spinout, right, where it's private, half of it's private equity backed. None of that has happened. I consider this in itself as a clue, because there's several instances where a company doesn't have to file any SEC filings, as Crackers learned. One of them is if the company is going to be a wholly owned subsidiary only to be acquired by somebody else. So right now there's clues that strongly suggest that. Let's talk about that new drilling permit. So on February 9th, it was released, some drilling permits. They're going to go into a horizontal. They drilled vertical, but now there's a permit for directional drilling, which would be horizontal. There was also in one of those reports where there was a discrepancy in the well plugs, and I'll illustrate what they were talking about, this particular report, where it was like, oh, if you want to drill, operator intends to drill horizontally, please submit report, and this is why, because you're permitted to plug here, but you plugged up here. You need to submit a survey about that difference. You need a permit now for that new plug. So, because they are now drilling horizontally, that's usually a very good step in the terms of developing the property. One, where are they getting the money to develop the property? Right? Who's drilling on it now? Is it the same team? Is it Maverick? Because we know that Maverick was drilling this property. They have the permits filed. And Maverick's drilled this property for Torch before. They've worked with Torch on this property. Maverick was coming over from ConocoPhillips. That's why they were delayed, right? It wasn't because of the COVID and the truck drivers. It was because they were busy drilling that other Conoco property, and we had to wait for them to come on over. Once I saw that deal signed and when it was signed, they acquired the asset in October. No wonder, or September. It was like they had that property for like 7 months before it was announced. No wonder they were delayed in getting the drilling equipment to the Oro Grande because they were busy drilling on the new Conoco property, which was older wells. The Conoco property is older wells, but Maverick Natural Resources specializes in older wells and maintaining them inexpensively and recapturing that value. That's what they specialize in doing. That's their business strategy. As a result, Conoco was offloading some lesser properties. Now, look at this chart of Permian giants. Before Conoco bought that shell property, they were what? 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5 in the Permian, Texas Permian Basin. After the shell, they're number 2, slightly behind Pioneer. Which, by the way, I'll pull this up. Pioneer has a very low cost of goods sold. That doesn't include their overhead. That's just production costs associated with the barrel. It's about, 8 something in the later half of 2021. So bump it up for 2022 as fuel costs have gone up. Along with everything else, but still that's their production costs, which I think are pretty good. It doesn't really take in consideration overhead. So again, I like that $28 cost of goods sold. So I'm still thinking it could go a multitude of ways. It could still go with the spinout with EIG backing, but there's still no SEC filings. Another way it could go is if some other company just comes along and acquires it. Conoco has become now the number 2 producer. What if Conoco gets this property and becomes number 1 and they just dominate the Permian? If you look at the map of Conoco's lands, it does go about as far to Hudspeth County as you can get. Conoco's land stops right at the edge, basically, of the mountains where Guadalupe Peak is. And, you got to go through Guadalupe Peak to get to the Oro Grande. So those mountains, they're kind of like a pestilence in the way. We need to instill the help of Gimli to go through Erebor. Maybe we'll find the Arkenstone. That'd be cool. By the way, the Arkenstone is like also a cool rock shop in Arkansas. The Arkenstone, I guess they, The Hobbit's not a new book. It's not a new thing. It's been out for a while now. So the Arkenstone. But we need like Gimli's help. But so Conoco, series of pipelines, and they go pretty far west in the Permian. There's maybe a possibility that Conoco's getting it. That's just a theory. If you look at the dividend numbers, so I'm going to pull this up. If you pull up the dividend numbers from Conoco, notice even through COVID, it was consistently 46 cents per quarter. Even through COVID, when oil was negative, they were still doling out dividends. It's a way to keep shareholders happy. And now they've rolled out, along with Pioneer, the new dynamic dividend or variable dividend, which is like you get a flat dividend fee. So you're going to have 2 types of dividends. One's flat. That's your regular one. It just stays flat, 46 cents, 82 cents, whatever. And then you have the variable dividend, which starts out slow but then goes up over the years. Pioneer's variable dividend is very aggressive. It's like at $3.52 right now. Conoco's start out small. It started out like, 20 cents in December and now 30 cents in January. And that's in between the regular dividends. I'm not sure how they were going to start the dynamic dividend. If they intentionally started it lower, that savings across the shares combined with the $440 million. Now remember, they had a share buyback. But combine that with like the $440 million that they got from Maverick, which was financed through Chase Bank and a whole bunch of other people. You know, that's close to $1 billion. And that would be, you know, a very nice figure for that holdback dividend, which is 10%. That's just a theory, speculation. But Conoco would have the cash, at least for the holdback dividend, to cover that. And or to develop the property. I mean, they have quite the cash flow. Pioneer has very good value for their stock. Number one producer, very low cost of goods sold. As a result, that's why they're doling out $3 special dividends, you know, for their variable dividend. But I was reading over the Pioneer's forecasting report for 2022. They don't intend to really expand where they are. They're taking a different approach. They're trying to do methane recapture, gas recapture with their ESG systems. That's what they're going to focus on going into the future, and this whole ESG aspect, which is fine. You know, you want to do some gas captures, great. I mean, I'm all for it. You know, I study emissions. I'm all for capturing those emissions. Conoco, however, along with Exxon, are taking a more aggressive approach and playing the Pokemans and trying to catch them all. Although we haven't really heard anything from Exxon yet about being aggressive and capturing. I will say, you know, Torch and Maverick are connected, right? They've worked together. Maverick is sponsored by EIG. It's a private equity-backed company by EIG. We know that. So there's a chance that EIG could be nextbridge. But now that Maverick and Conoco have a deal, it makes me think, you know, and again, this is strong evidence with the dividend and the cash on hand that Conoco has and their whole cash flow situation right now, which is very positive, that maybe Conoco would get the property. They'd pay for, you know, the holdback dividend in cash. You'd get paid in stock. That'd create a non-taxable event. Now, you would be personally taxed if you sold the ConocoPhillips stock. But there's no corporate tax, and you're not taxed on it personally for holding. How long you held it, and then you sold it. Under a year, capital gains. Over a year, long-term gains. But that would create the non-taxable event. So we will see. They have a business relationship. Conoco certainly has they've been doing the share buybacks, so they do have the shares to compensate for the Torchlight and anything else. Although it's not going to be, you know, direct one MMTLP or one oilco to one Conoco. We know the value of our dividend, right? And, you know, if it happens to be $35, then we can convert that, you know, into a Conoco stock. So that creates, I think, a win-win for everybody. Some people would love to have just Conoco and keep it. It's great. Some people would cash out immediately. You know, if you got stock and you sold it, it's really no different than if you just had cash appear in your account. You are taxed on that, yes. Keep that in mind. But if you hold Conoco, you're not taxed. We'll get into that later. Like I said, let's work on getting, like, the dividend. Then we'll start to explain taxes. But, you know, this whole Conoco situation, which I've been thinking about quite a bit for the past several weeks now, you know, it has me thinking, and the fact that we haven't seen any SEC filings. Now, Conoco's ex-dividend date was today, February 11th. It might be that, you know, that's why things change. Like in December, it was said, oh, we'll have the spinout completed by end of January, right? Early Q1, end of January. Mid-January comes out. March. We'll have it completed by March. Well, why are we waiting until March, right? It might be because of this dividend. You know, the ConocoPhillips regular dividend. Not the special one. Not the variable one, which is different than the special. So these are just some points to consider that, you know, I'm telling you about. There's no SEC filings, but there are new Railroad Commission filings with the drillings, which I think is great. It sort of nips it in the bud that there's no oil or hydrocarbons there, because why would you drill horizontal to, you know, if the vertical wells didn't show anything? Why would you start drilling horizontal, right? So as much as we would like a private company, you know, that would be cool. The ConocoPhillips, okay, trading stock. MMTLP's going to oilco immediately because that's the holdings company. Immediately then changes to Conoco. That would also be easiest for people who have foreign, you know, overseas, who live overseas, who have other trading venues. They're getting like an actual stock, nothing OTC, nothing private. It's pretty easy for all platforms. But using the Conoco, it's called, the legal term for this is called the Equivalency clause in legalese. And basically, you know, it gives short sellers something to cover with. Conoco, they have to go by Conoco now. If this is announced as Conoco, you know, if it goes into oilco and then it's announced, Conoco, you got to cover with Conoco. Or you have to go get some MMTLPs, and then if you don't get MMTLPs, you got to go buy Conoco. But that certainly creates the equivalency clause for legality reasons, for liability purposes. But it's good because if there's that many synthetic shares, now I'll talk about synthetic shares in the next episode. I see a lot of stuff going around about synthetic shares. What is it? How is it created? I have a really good analogy about it. I think the puppets can do a way better job of explaining it than I could. That's for next episode, is talking about those synthetic shares. But you have all those synthetic shares out. And, you know, they have to get those. It's gonna circle around quite a few times, go up the ladder, and even if there's a big sell-off with Conoco, that's kind of gonna be negated with the fact that, one, some people want Conoco, two, people have to go now buy Conoco, so that kind of equals out. The selling and the buying kind of equal out, or Conoco could get fun. Because if Conoco announces, hey, we just acquired 3.2 billion barrels of oil, I think their stock price would go up. And hey, we're going to be number one driller in the Permian now. We're king of the Permian. We're king of WTI, baby. Their stock's going to go up. People are going to eat that up. Again, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, all those tier 1 analysts, and the top, you know, upper echelon of tier 2, Wells Fargo. They were all there at that Shell acquisition meeting clapping. They're going to be clapping at this meeting and saying, oh, our rating for Conoco goes up. So this is just something, like I said, to consider, some food for thought for the weekend. Again, Conoco's ex-dividend date was today. So yeah, we will see coming into the next week. There might not be anything. We might not hear anything till March. But especially with that dynamic dividend. But keep in mind, guys, there has been no SEC filings. If it's going to be completed, the oilco spinout, the assets going in oilco completed by March, we'd see some SEC filings if this was a spinout company. Nothing. All right, guys. I will see you soon. Goodbye.